think there has been a consistent and steady rise in racism for decades, and there's been lots of data to suggest that racism certainly isn't getting any better, and I do believe it is getting worse when you look at what has happened, not prior to Brexit and also in that campaign and following on. Yeah, of course, racism is absolutely getting worse. We now have a prime minister who who's openly referred to black people as pickaninnies with watermelon smiles, as Muslim women as letterboxes. I mean, think of the confidence that gives to racists and racism throughout the country. Yes, it's absolutely getting worse. And I've seen some of the narrative that's been put out by those in power about how there could be a genetic predisposition or a lack of vitamin D, and I think that needs to be utterly rejected. This is a 19th century pseudoscience that there's a genetic difference between black and white people. This has been disproved time and time again. For me, what is leading to the disproportionate deaths amongst black and minority ethnic people is racism and inequality. If you are black, you are more likely to live in poverty. If you live in poverty, you are more likely to have an underlying condition. If you have an underlying condition, you're more likely to die because of COVID-19. Again, if you're black, you're more likely to be in precarious work. That means you're not being able to take part in a lockdown, and that means you've been greater exposed to the virus. Also, black people are higher represented in a lot of key worker roles, on the buses and the NHS, and that means that there's been greater exposure. But fundamentally, I believe that racism and inequality is what's led to the disproportionate death rate. It's not the first time, is it, we've seen a black man in America saying, "I can't breathe." There was Eric Garner, and so I've avoided the video. I've seen the photos. I've seen what's been said on social media. I'm not really interested even in sort of like the mainstream media's commentary on the event. To be honest, I think what we saw is another public lynching of a black man in America by a racist policeman. That's what I fundamentally believe, and I've seen, and what we're seeing now is people react to that. People in Minneapolis are absolutely right to be angry. People across America, right to be angry. People here at home are right to be standing in solidarity against police racism over there. So, I think that's what we're seeing is a natural reaction to racism and police brutality. So there's a number of ways I believe the NEU fights racism. Firstly, I think I'm very pleased that the NEU's taken a position on combating racism in education. So, for example, there's been lots of campaigning around exclusions. Black children or black Afro-Caribbean boys are 3 times more likely to be excluded from schools. That goes up to 156 times more likely to be excluded from schools if you're black, if you're on free school meals and you have a special need. So there's been lots of grassroots campaigning by lay members around exclusions. The NEU's we've also been looking at how we can deal with some of the institutional racism that does occur in education. So we're developing an anti-racist framework for schools to give sort of members the confidence to have discussions with their local authorities and with their senior management about racism in schools as black members of staff or as black children. But we're also looking to strengthen the anti-racist current in education by developing a decolonizing agenda around the curriculum. The curriculum is very Eurocentric. Children are taught this sort of nationalistic island nation narrative of British history that doesn't reflect the truth. So we are developing a decolonizing agenda inside education and amongst our members. But we also, do a lot to support grassroots anti-racism campaigns, NGOs, charities like Show Racism Red Card, because we recognise that it's not just to be enough just to be trying to combat racism in education, but we need to do that also in wider society. Racism exists in education because society has issues with racism, so we need to take on the wider fight as well.